Okay, welcome back to the Dive Lab. Of course, we are still talking gas planning and gas math. We've just spent a bit of time releasing 3 videos, 60, 100, and 130 feet. And essentially the scenario is, from each of those depths, if I had some sort of out-of-air emergency, would the 40 cubic foot pony tank be enough? And now that we can see all 3 of the scenarios on the board, 60 feet, 100 feet, and 130 feet, I'm going to share with you exactly what my preferences are and in terms of how I dive at these depths on a single tank, which, by the way, doesn't happen very often anymore, unless I'm actually teaching a course. My own personal comfort level would be absolutely, I would have no issues, of course, at 60 feet, diving with a 40 cubic foot pony tank as my redundant emergency air option. I did it tons of times back in the day, and I still would do it today. 100 feet for me is where things start to get interesting, because then I'm going to ask the question, well, who am I actually diving with? Am I diving with a bit of a newer diver? Am I teaching a deep course? Am I diving with a very solid self-reliant diver who is sort of equipped just like I am? Then if that's the case, I would have no issues diving with my single 100 or 133 cubic foot tank steel, as well as my 40 cubic foot pony as my emergency redundant option. But I will tell you, if I am teaching a deep recreational course at 100 feet, then absolutely this 40 cubic foot pony tank is going to turn into an AL80 pony tank. And I simply just grab one of my stages from the tech side, and I use that as my emergency back gas. And the reason is, I'm just trying to anticipate something goes wrong with the student while we're down at 100 feet. And so an 80 cubic foot tank, based on the math, gives us more than enough time and more than enough air to deal with most of those type of problems. Obviously, in this scenario at 130 feet, if I were to do this on a single back tank, then no doubt my AL80 would be my sort of emergency air. Because then I know I can do the math with the conservatism and still have plenty of redundancy in case something goes wrong. Really all I'm trying to do here is just plan for the what if. But let's talk dive plan for a second, and let's just focus on 60 feet, because based on the math, we said, hey, 60 feet, a 40 cubic foot pony tank has no problem getting us all the way to the surface. By now, hopefully, we all agree that if the pony tank is full, we will have no problem doing a direct ascent from 60 feet to our safety stop to the surface. But the challenge with that is it really depends on the dive. This is now a vertical ascent to the surface. So hey, you figured out the worst problem. You got back to safety, you're at the surface. However, what you don't want to do is replace one critical danger with another danger. And so the example would be, yes, I managed to get to the surface, but at the surface, where am I? Am I in a shipping channel that now I have to actually deal with another danger? Who knows? So it really is dive location dependent. And you may want to take at your plan and say, hey, yes, sure, I know I can get to the surface, but do I even want to take that a step further and say, do I want to exit the dive the way that I entered? And you might be asking, well, Dave, what exactly does that mean? Okay, great. So let's talk surface for a second. We have a big mooring ball. Then we have a charter boat. And I'm going to really suck at drawing a charter boat. Attached to the mooring ball. Mooring ball down here, 60 feet. We'll call it a block. And somewhere along here, you have a nice big wreck to go and see. You ascend down the mooring ball, you make your way to the wreck at 60 feet, and you have a great dive. Now you have to think about worst case scenario. All right, if I became out of air, I lost my back gas, whatever the reason would be, where is the worst case scenario? And it really depends on what your exit plan is. If you're trying to say, hey, in that scenario, I want to actually exit safely the way I came up and do my safety stop, before heading back to the surface. Well, now this is more than just a vertical ascent on the pony tank, and you are going to have to factor that in. So something to think about, because imagine we lose back gas at the worst possible location on the wreck, and now because of our plan, we jump on the pony tank and we head straight up to do our safety stop, and we end up here. What if there's a ton of current here? What if this is a shipping channel? And the reason I say this is because here in the St. Lawrence, we actually have this exact example. And so while going to the surface, if that's the option, that's the option. It really is dependent on the location. And so yes, if this is the only option you got is to go straight to the surface, you take your chances at the surface, it is what it is. Now you can ask the right question, say, okay, from here all the way back, all the way up safety stop, all the way to the surface at the mooring ball, back to the boat, does my 40 cubic foot pony tank at 60 feet still have enough? If we thought a vertical ascent to the surface was probably not our best option because of the dive location, and that we actually wanted to head back the way we came in, then we sort of have to just sort of do the dive plan. And for me, I would say, all right, if this is worst case scenario, that at the back of the wreck, and I feel like, hey, it's probably going to take me at least 5 minutes to get back to the mooring block, I would simply just add another leg to my dive plan just to make sure that my gas math is working out. So we could actually call this L1. We could actually call the ascent up to our safety stop L2. We could call our safety stop L3. And then, of course, the last little bit of ascent back to the surface could be L4. And so now if we capture that, we have to sort of say, hey, estimate how long would it actually take me in terms of getting back to that mooring block so I could actually ascend back up the mooring line. And so, again, we go back to the template. We go L1, L2, L3, and L4. And all we've got to do now is just simply solve for a few things. Like we said, average depth, time, RMV for each leg. If we look at leg 1, which is getting back to the mooring block on our pony tank, just giving an example of the wreck that we would have, one of our local wrecks here in Brockville, Ontario, leg 1 is probably going to take us 5 minutes to get back to that mooring block. We already know from our previous examples that we're going to spend 2 minutes going up to our safety stop from 60 feet. So that one will be 2 minutes. We know our safety stop will be 3 minutes. And then, of course, it'll take 1 minute to get from our safety stop up to the surface. Average depth, of course, L1, well, our depth is not really changing much. So that's going to be 60 feet or 2.8 atmospheres. And so we also know, because we're going to use a sac rate of 1.0, that at 2.8 times 1.0 sac rate, I know I'm going to be consuming 2.8 cubic feet per minute under normal breathing conditions. So we have to keep that in mind. And so leg 2, we know we're going to have an average depth of 40 feet as we descend up to our safety stop, or 2.2 atmospheres. And again, 2.2 times our sac rate is going to give us 2.2 cubic feet per minute. This one's pretty easy, of course, 20 feet or 1.6 atmospheres. So 1.6 cubic feet per minute. And last but not least, we know this is going to be 10 feet, 1.3 atmospheres, and of course 1.3 cubic feet per minute. So perfect. If we grab the red marker so we can solve for gas on each of the legs, now we can start to do the math. So L1, to get from our worst case scenario back to the mooring block, we say it's going to take 5 minutes, and we're breathing 2.8 cubic feet per minute. 2.8 cubic feet per minute is going to be, at 5 minutes, is going to be 14 cubic feet required for L1. We already know leg 2, but leg 2, of course, is going to be ascent to the safety stop, and that's going to be 4.4 cubic feet total. We also know our safety stop. Safety stop is actually going to be 4.8 cubic feet. And last but not least, we also know that 1.3 cubic feet a minute for 1 minute is going to be 1.3 cubic feet. And so if we total all of this up, our total gas required to exit this dive safely from the worst possible case on this wreck would be somewhere around 24.5 cubic feet required out of our pony tank. And so if we hit our 24.5 with our 1.5x conservative factor, we are going to get somewhere around approximately 37 cubic feet required to exit this dive safely from the worst possible case scenario. And so we are right on the limits of our 40 cubic foot pony tank capability in order to satisfy our gas planning requirements with conservatism. Couple things to keep in mind, because I know we've had some really good comments online in terms of some of the videos posted. Yes, this sack rate is certainly probably higher than average. And so if our sack rate is lower, of course, that means that we actually require less gas in order to do all of this gas math. But it also assumes that in an out of air emergency, we've switched to our pony tank, that we are able to keep our breathing under control. I mean, easier said than done for some, right? So again, all of this is a very conservative approach. Now, there could be a few variations in terms of how you would approach this out of air scenario in this particular example. And I would love to see some comments, but absolutely, instead of trying to say, I'll just go straight to the surface, I can go up and I can reduce my depth, which means I'm now improving my air consumption, and I could come back at 40 feet, keeping the wreck in sight, following the bottom until I hit the mooring line. Instead of hitting it at 60 feet, now I'm hitting it at 40 feet. Maybe I'm hitting it at 30 feet. It really comes down to the dive conditions and the visibility and how confident you are that you can actually go a little higher, but yet still make it back to your mooring line. But again, would love to hear some comments on this one. I can tell you, in the middle of summer in the St. Lawrence here in Brockville, Ontario, visibility starts to get down to about 10, 20 feet depending on the day. And so this sort of starts to become a little bit more challenging in terms of being able to keep the wreck in sight for a reference point, as well as still finding your way back to the mooring line. But again, dive dependent conditions. I hope these gas plan examples help, but the intent of these videos is to really kind of provoke some thoughts and get everyone to start thinking a little bit more about how to actually do gas planning math and the real value of actually becoming a self-reliant diver. I'm Diver Dave. Practice hard, dive safe. Take care.